the subject matter of my art, what I find joy out of, joy's expansion, pushes me to go further in this life, is consciousness in the study or the research of consciousness. Um, and when I say that, there's a few other antidotes that kind of tie together, but one being super consciousness, or this the place that most people can enter, like either from a place of fear, so like say something tragic is happening, it's like a crash or some sort of time crunch moment, or like people say time slows down and they have more focus around things, and in that time you can kind of see different options or angles and how you approach things, and in that amount of time you can make decisions and choices and think of all these other angles. That form of consciousness is a form of like subconscious and a conscious kind of combining in one moment and then coming together, so they have circumvents how time traditionally passes, and you're able to connect these things. And I find what art does, or fine art does, and high art has the ability to access that conscious. And the thing that I was trying to circumvent around was having to access it from a place of fear, because at some point that's a finite source. So comparing it to, again, either like a fossil fuel or it's just an opportunity force, it's more like earth blood. Comparing it to some form of finite source, material, gold, silver, things that are finite in earth, materials, minerals, and comparing that to something like hydrogen, which is all in the air, component of air. One is a lot easier to currently grab, but another one is more of a ongoing resource. So I try to access the super consciousness that we all have access to, which is the subconscious and the conscious, at the same time, and in that space, while actually enjoying the process. There's a moment of the fun. So, like for example, let's say with the sun grow, it's a combination of images that speak to the subconscious that kind of come together, and each kind of tell a story, but visually it's just simply appealing. So if you're looking at it from either a low art IQ, it's just something that has like appeal to you. We're talking even pop with indigenous figure, female figure, and the traditional hairstyle that fits into science fiction and the inspiration behind like Princess Leia's bun hair. That's Taurus field. To the image on even further, you can kind of see of the domino-like figures, which has perspective mode, which just looks like a bunch of holes. But if you look at it, or you know, like the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, it's a picture of that from Keter to all the way to Malkuth to the bottom, which is also why it's green. It's the earth. It's Malkuth. It's the lowest form of the tree of life or of knowledge, and that's earth currently. I think it's in its form. So, and all these things kind of connect together to tell a story. But what makes of me studying artists and art myself, of understanding what makes me high art or fine art, is the fact that it's entering in that superconscious state where like, decisions are made and it seems like it's intuitive, though it's depending on one state while creating it, it's a lot of time that was spent amassing this, either knowing how to do something right, or just knowledge and then putting it through a nice like tight funnel, like a filter. And that's what my art studies is, just consciousness. And and the reason why I like this is because it takes the best of things I like, which is like philosophical philosophy, thought, engineering, all these concepts that are more math-based in earth, and taking it to the surface of the fun, or what you put appear as fun, or what is given to you as fun, and digestible, and entertainment. If you can mix those two, then you have like fun learning. If you think back to as a child, which we all are, this development of soul, you really enjoy the process of like learning things when it's fun. That's what you remember mostly growing up. And if you can like continue that process, then you'll be able to keep amassing wisdom because you're actually enjoying the process. Most things that you tend to remember or hold on to are things that you had fun doing. So by having fun with the process, that's what makes it something. And that's why deep art, it's enjoyable to look at. But you're also learning something, mostly hopefully about yourself, which is about all of us. So it should be applied to yourself as well. Or some sort of retrospection that then elevates you in your understanding of yourself. Like for example, majority of us are using these Apple devices. And there's multiple ways to use it, but it's one thing as compared to conscious subconscious. Consciously, it's one thing to learn how to use the app on here and how to properly use social media and use it for your best interest. Like say Instagram. It's another thing to understand like why there isn't or why there's a semiconductor in here versus like tubes, or why is it semiconductor, or why does it have a low pass filter, or why is it made of aluminum or steel, or when it was made of aluminum and they had the antenna going around, and why when held in a certain way kind of block up the antenna, and they had to change that later on. So basically how it works. So the subconscious is knowing how this device that you can use the apps for actually works. And what I find, or at least when it's true, most of us, majority, like more than 90% of us don't comprehend like how this thing actually functions, like how we cannot rebuild this ourselves. If it was all taken apart piece by piece and we're told to name each part and to put it back together, that's not gonna be done. But most of us can like press the power button and it starts working, and you can like send a text or use it in some form, some capacity. And that's what you get with the subconscious and the conscious, or even historically, let's say the pyramids, for example. These are things that were already done can't be redone because not enough people held the information that can be translated to now. So it just gets lost. And it will always fascinate me, studying history and just how the brain operates, is connecting those two, because I was always wondering like why is there a disconnect between like all the things that we touch and use and how they're actually working. And the thing we touch the most is our thoughts. We're always constantly thinking. That's kind of the basis behind certain practices, from physical movement to meditation and other ones that are more mind-based, and what that kind of does for you. So I find my art, the connection between the two, and connecting like the subconscious, which would be the inner workings of the semiconductor, why there's a low pass filter, what is a low pass filter, how does, why is there gold within the circuitry, what does the circuitry do, what is circuitry, how does the gold actually connect and make the transfer of information work, and just why all these things happen. And then connecting that to the fun part of like, hey, there's this app where you can connect to people, you can text your friends, you can send them pictures, you can show them videos, and you can just have fun things and laugh. If you can connect those two things, then you have something that's worth sharing, that's fun in the whole, because the iPhone in itself is fun, but most people wouldn't want to go into the circuitry behind it. It's interesting to a group, but as a mass, if you can make that part interesting to all, then we'll all have some form of knowledge going forward that's best for us. And it's not about learning how to build the pyramids, it's more about learning yourself, the pyramid within yourself, which then ties back to the tree of life. In the imagery, that's just a nice image of the tree of life, and looking at it from perspective of outside it, and next to the indigenous individual from Americas with the Taurus field on their head, and why it says like sun girl, and why Apollo connected to it, because again, we're just traditionally taught Apollo is the original form of what we're taught Greek and Roman wise, and that's the form of God we know, while other religions or older ones, let's say the indigenous Americans, the Hopi tribe, have it as a female and the feminine form. all the way to Korea and Japan, which have their deity that is the god as a female as well. So there's the juxtaposition, but I just want to communicate that simply like, it's the same thing. And the balancing of the masculine and the feminine is where the balance is found, and then once balance is found, you can kind of go through that and achieve the next level. And so that's why that's an example of connecting the subconscious to the conscious. While I found me selecting these pieces that ended up being on this piece together, it takes me anywhere from 90 seconds to 5 minutes. And in that 90 seconds to 5 minutes, it's my brain subconsciously selecting these pieces. And let's say I started with the sun girl color, and then the idea of the sun girl, and then it'll tap into materials that I've had amassed over the last 10 years, this decade, and I'll pull from this and pull from this. But since I already have like a memory of seeing all these things in the last decade, I can just think of one thing and then it'll kind of lead and connect this web, like a web, like neurons firing, and connect these ideas into one singular idea. So when I have the thought of, okay, I'm having this motif continuing on in the female form from all three of my large canvases, I'm going to continue that story. What about the last one did I do subconsciously that I can communicate consciously now? Okay, why did I choose to draw her in the brown shade? And why did she have buffalo tallow and the relaxer in her hair, which made it straight? What did all these things, stories? Okay, it's connected to this. Let me start with that as a jumping off point. And I get to my study of the Hopi tribes, and we go to their history of their female deity and why that mattered. And I like the color orange. I used it before, so I bring the orange in, and the orange is the color of the sun in this context to use it as. And it dovetailed from that to her imagery, and her imagery was like, that's very interesting because I think people think about it more, because like looking at this, you wouldn't assume this is where George Lucas got his connection to the Princess Leia buns, or like where did these things come from? Like what is their source? And that will kind of draw you into it, and then you're connecting of like her to the sun girl, and you think of, okay, what religions? Well, she obviously looks indigenous American to the Americas. So what religion is talking about the sun as a female? It obviously must be them. And why is Apollo next to it? So like Apollo and the sun god are somehow connected. And these list more descriptional parts of on the top, which I'll show in a minute, of the scale of miles, which means it's measuring something in land. It's the measurement system. And then we have the word desert going through the scale of miles. So it's measurement of systems within a scale of miles in a desert form, which leaves you into the a certain part of the Americas, kind of zooms in for you. And then the tree of life was something that kind of connects it all, with the sun being in a different form of it, and then Earth being down here, and us in a different form, and it's all connected, but you can only connect it from the very top. You're looking at it from an outside perspective, which is going back to the super consciousness of the subconscious and the conscious together. Can you like connect all this together? And what's I enjoy about this is that by accessing my subconscious and but knowing how to backtrack it consciously and comprehend each step I made, it's enjoyable doing something as far as like fine art, because the thing about having an art history or being around fine art, you're able to connect these things just through either exposure to really great art, or you're researching art history, you're able to notice these things. And so when you see great art yourself as someone who collects great art, you're able to connect these dots. And what I enjoy about this is like individuals who are in different places of their spiritual growth or just their growth in general, and just either focusing on one thing or focusing on this, are able to see connections that they can attach to, like, oh, this is something. Because subconsciously, we all have our subconscious. You're attracted to this and you attach to it, but you also see the value of it on the surface of the conscious. Like, this is appealable to more masses while also having a layer of depth to it, which most artists are able to comprehend and do, the great ones. And it's nice when it's translatable to the larger population, but it has a deeper meaning for those that can feel or see that. And going through these motifs, it connects. So I give little, like, more of an insight or markers, which as I see myself, like, though I see a very, very long game in this art. I like the use of language currently, and if I see myself as I have the time, the grace to kind of expand on that, to slowly remove it. For now, I enjoy the process of adding it as like hints and tricks to provide self-insight, but I find like the refinement as every artist gets to the point of elevating, you start pulling that back and it becomes more of a feeling just through the repetition of your work being seen. So in this case, with the verbs and the words that I use, I'm a fan of the connection, the conjuring of all these together. And all of this comes down to like the far left when we have the green. This process of testing the purity of metals, of applying the test of love. Again, that to me is, love is unquantifiable, or if you think about it scientifically, it is a quantifiable effect. It's a law of attraction, or just attracting things to you. And care could be quantified, but just like metals have a connectivity to it, so does love. It kind of draws and attracts. And this connectivity is what transfers energy through it. So this research of alchemical practices is either alchemist's love for finding the truth or getting to the bottom of the soul and the animus mundi, and then taking that and kind of being able to comprehend the soul or the why, and then sharing that with themselves. Either they do it through a quest of seeking immortality, which the immortality is just the immortality of the mind and understanding of when one transfers forward this next form and maintaining that wisdom. All these things kind of bring it together, so if you can read those small insights, you'll get more context on the Apollo, the Sun Girl, and the Tree of Life, and the Tree of Knowledge, or the simple, longer format, which is, from my research in Tibetan mystics, at atonement, they call it at one-ment, so with the one being the focus of this, is the super mundane state, which is the same thing as super consciousness, of a transcendent equilibrium, whereas negative and positive become undifferentiated, where the two opposites charges constituting the atom merge in primordial unity, wherein neither good or evil exists. So there's a few words that really just matter. The rest is kind of the roadmap to understanding what the words mean. At one-ment being like the oneness of yourself as source. If you want to go Big Bang Theory, it all started from one point. If you just want to go to God, forms of God, it created these things, which created these things, which created these things, which creates these things, which creates these things, and it eventually ended with us here. And then the super mundane state is a great way of saying the subconscious and the conscious, because it's mundane because that's where you should be. It's just, we're so far removed from accessing our subconscious and analyzing our consciousness, things that Friedrich Nietzsche was studying, or really trying to do in his own work, in his own life, which is commendable, to Carl Jung, going deep into the subconscious and its later forms of life in his psychotherapy and psychoanalysis of individuals out in the world with his knowledge of psychology and comprehending these dream states, which is subconscious. We reach a level of transcendent equilibrium, and that's like the balancing state of everything. And if you reach that balancing state, you're able to see all angles, which goes back to the Tree of Life and how you can only see, there's 4 layers, but you can only see in this image the first layer. So unless you're viewing at it from source, like outside of us, and looking down, say out of body experience, are you able to actually see the top to the bottom? And with us existing in Malkuth, the lowest level, of course, going further down, you're looking at it from a different perspective or a different angle, typically a lower angle, a more like 90-degree even angle, so you're only able to see the one that you're on. And that's why you constantly see the repetition of it, where it's just that 1, 1, 1. But for others, looking at a different angle, they might be seeing 3 to 4 to 5 as they go down. They're just not always stuck at that 1. But it's just the state of where it's at now. It's where most of it's 1, and for the top person, the top being, the top entity, seeing all of this. And in my own self-development, I really was studying negative and the positive, and something that I've been really sticking on to, like when you point a finger, three point back at you. So what is it about in my recent life or this life that I've gotten to a place of peace of just letting go of negative emotions or negative feelings, because at the end of the day, they don't serve you. And as an artist, that's a big thing, because you tend to be driven off your quest for knowledge, and when you can translate that to life, and you're able to reach this level of peace, and usually that peace is done through a massive amount of work. I think of someone I admire and look up to, like Rashid Johnson, his level of order in his life that he produces into the analyzing the chaos of art. And there's a synergy there, which when you separate the two, you're able to exist in that balanced state. I wanted that same state just like all the time. And that is, there's a way to go about this, and I found just like, there will always be things that are negative, but there's a choice to respond and how you act of it. And in my recent time of life, as I've been doing these pieces, I found that my superpower has been calm, and accessing this calm state is what allows me to be sure of my decisions when making art, and then to be able to eloquently attach meaning that they already have, but pull that from source. So being a vessel for source to communicate these connections. And when the calm came on and the negative self-talk and talk about others, talk about the world, just focusing on negative things that end up cycling back, because until you get to a place, or I have personally found until I've gotten to a place of being okay with the negative things going on and accepting them, and then actually being grateful for them, because as the lessons they allowed you to either get to a level of consciousness or knowledge that you were able to use and then use in your future endeavors and navigations, you start enjoying the process. So all contrast, I consider starting with a blank canvas as contrast, and look when you get the results you get. You get a beautiful painting that has high meaning to it, and it is elevating the viewer's understanding of themselves. So contrast is probably the greatest thing that we have on earth, and a lot of times people like to complain about contrast, and when you complain about contrast, you just amplify it, and you're just getting more and more and more chaos. And at the end of the day, chaos is energy. It's a natural form of energy. It's what Primordial speaks of, which gets down further. But from chaos comes order, and that's why personally, like, I respect certain aspects of our creation, or why we got to this point. And certain things represent that. And so me getting into Apollo, and for me, that goes back to the Greek and Roman, and I look at things a little differently, and the story of Kronos comes to mind in time. It's more of like a lesson of learning order before you take the primordial chaos and bring it to the world. And that's kind of the story of what happened with Zeus, when Zeus kind of preemptively exited and took the role of this main deity within their pantheon, before they were really incubated and had time to grow. And then that chaos then seeped into the stories that you hear of their gods interacting with humans, which is very it's chaotic. Like if you read these stories of Greek and Roman gods, it's chaos, it's entertainment. It's what you find on HBO, Hulu, Amazon TV, Disney Plus. It's chaos condensed into a form that's digestible. And if you're not looking at it through a light of comprehending it as chaos and finding the ways that it can actually be remedied, you're just being a part of the chaos. In great art from abstractism may seem chaotic, but it's coming from an individual who has practiced a level of order, so their chaos is order, and behind that chaos is order. We're talking Rothko, we're talking Pollock, these individuals who what you thought was chaos, but it's try to make what they make, and then you go home and realize you can't make a Rothko, or you can't make a Pollock, because it's actual order. But in the mind of someone who views it as chaos, you're only going to be able to create chaos. So you're creating what you are. And they just happen to have a level of order within their hands from dedication and practice to convey that. But that's why they're in galleries. Not galleries, that's why they're in museums. Because when you transcend that, museums who are known for their history and historianism are able to to quantify the value of a certain artist, and then like this needs to be preserved museum, and that's kind of how that works out. And the path that I'm working on, and what keeps me producing more art, is that level of ascension within the art world. So back to the halfway through this, in all of this spiritual talk, somehow the words positive, negative, and an atom comes into play. So where the two opposite charges constituting the atom merge. So it's very interesting how, when thinking of esoteric things, they're still speaking on scientifics. So the grounding is what I love to have, like the grounding of all this, and by remaining grounded, you're able to connect it all, like connected versus being detached, as in the tree of life. Like the bottoms are detached from the top, you can't see the rest. Or for some reason, the one that has the omnipresent overall is attached to all of it, and that's the beauty of it all. So taking these esoteric concepts and merging it back into science with the mention of an atom gets your mind going back to like, wait, I thought I was reading something that's like a spiritual passage, and it gets you back to like, what about atoms? Atoms are neutrons, electrons, and ions, and nucleus. All these things come into play, which is just a microcosm of where we're at now. What actually society and Earth is. It's a larger, smaller version of it. Everything's fractal, and it just kind of comes down, which then circles back to the tree of life, because it's a fractal. It's the same thing, just a little smaller on the bottom ones. So seeing the positive and negative come together, if they could do it on an atom, that means that should be able to be done in society. So if you're pointing something as negative, that negativity is what's still within you. So there's no point, and it has a point of being there. It's a balancing act. So any punishment of negativity ends up coming back to punish them, because we're all in this together. It's a connective source of society. So punishing one of negativity then comes back, because executing that punishment then hurt the whole society as a whole. And understanding the balance of good and evil, and taking those who are in both places and kind of just raising them up from there. Like when you pull a perfectly grown carrot, it's like now out the ground, so it's not gonna have any more effect. It can't like rot in the ground or affect the ground. It's already removed. So if you can elevate it, whether it's good or evil, and just remove it from the source in the soil, it's no longer affected in a positive or negative way. It's just out of it. And if we can all just kind of get out of it, then there's no need of the cycle back of like the punishment cycle of like positives done, reward, negatives done, punishment, and it kind of just cycles back into this endless story of punishment and reward in this like backhand, forehand. Until that's elevated, it's going to be a cycle. And like the cycle, the same way the sun rises and sets, sun and moon. So that's why I'm speaking on the sun, because if you think about the sun, you get to see it if you're lucky living in California or some of the better states that have a large majority of sunny days. You're able to see the progression of the sun in the sky, and you see it come, you see it go, and that cycle speaks back to the cycles of this life. So when these atoms emerge, positive and negative come together, it becomes primordial unity. So essentially primordial is before us, before everything was created, pre-Big Bang. In this primordial soup, you're able to like have like what they call like the essence or dark matter, or just the soul. In this essence and dark matter, there's unity because it's all there. So like it's curious a case like why is space filled with so much dark matter? It's at 98%. 2% of the known universe is filled. The rest is dark matter. What is this dark matter, and why is it together, and why is it like a milky essence that binds together? It's all connected. And where in that essence does good and evil not exist? It's when creation was made that all the good and the evil started kind of formulating from all mythos, just analyzing life through analyzing. And these are all things that I have to give micro hints to for individuals who may not have the same level of esoteric or even any esoteric insight to these things, but that's something that creatives tend to have a more of an inkling toward. Like particularly, I think of it from a writer standpoint. If you're going to write something good, you're going to be studying. Let's take, for example, the Odyssey currently. Homer is going to be practicing and studying these these subject matters that are beyond the human eye in order to make something that's so enthralling. Or if he was told the story as a fact with all the components in it as facts, that's a whole other can of worms. Then there's that, which is an intriguing analysis of it, going back to even Plato saying he knows of Atlantis. But back to the idea of the Iliad and the Odyssey. The reason why it's drawing the love it's drawing and why it was filmed in the 70 millimeter actual film is it's a magic show. It is kind of in itself is magic, and again, it's the story of the atom. So it's taking all the bad that was done in the Iliad, all the things. At the end of the day, his only thing he wanted was to be home and love, and he was taken away from that consistently. And then he eventually got back to that through his dedication, and when he became like one and paid his own penance to himself, because he had no business angering the gods. There's other ways to go about this, but due to his own hubris, he wanted to like circumvent the time, and when he circumvented the time, he ended up getting more time. So it's like there's a balancing act here, and once he learned to kind of just be at one with the journey, he was able to make it back home. And that was a lesson the gods wished to have him learn, was that it's all a balancing act of all parts involved. The gods, the earth, humans, they all have to kind of have the symbiotic unison, and that's what allowed him to get back home. That's why everyone's leaving the theaters enthralled, because Christopher Nolan was able to capture just that simple fact in film form. And the thing about film is like it's entrancing to everybody because it's sound, music, Foley, art, actors, cinematographers, the capture of lights, locations. It's all the aspects of art put into one, so it's easily digestible. You can even put art within the film. The thing about art is that it's a singular source, so it's a pinhole, and it just goes right into your pineal, right into your source. So unlike film, fine art does something to you where it can strike you and move you just from being in the same presence as it, and that's why you get the price tags you get with fine art, and that's why it's in certain people's homes who are trying to take a point of elevation. And there's prints, but prints are prints. Original is original, and there's energy behind the brushstrokes. That's why you go to museums. So that's the cohesive story of something as simple as like the Sun Girl. The words will matter if you see it in person. Those for collectors and for individuals who are purchasing. But like I find the knowledge and the wisdom behind the pieces are for everybody. That's easily accessible. And the day that these are in museums, hopefully people are still here and they'll be able to partake in that when that time comes. And that's it. That's the story of Journey of Life.